My name is MacKenzie. I'm from Orange County, California. I founded and created CrossFit Endurance. We've used CrossFit more or less as the greatest athletic screen for an athlete out there. When I can expose somebody in any function, in some sort of functional movement to that specific weakness, when I can pick up on somebody's weakness within a functional movement, I can make what it is they're good at even better. And this is what we've found through our program. There aren't many sports I have not dealt with a specific athlete. Anywhere from, today it's a lot of focus is with rowing, endurance athletes, surfers, MMA athletes. I've worked with NFL, football, I've worked with soccer, I've worked with, it essentially goes into everything. From there, I had played with several devices for lung training, and being a swimmer, most of my life I swam for roughly 20 years, semi-competitively, and I understood a great deal about hypoxic training in the fact that it's not just about altitude. The ability of your body to handle the stress of not being able to breathe as fast as you can or as much as you can is a learned experience, and it actually comes down to a large ordeal of it is mental, but it's also a physical. Your diaphragm is actually a muscle, and your intercostals are actually muscles as well, which are in between your ribs. And these muscles play a significant role in your lungs development and how to play with this. Yogis have been doing this for years, where they've learned, and I've played around in the yoga world as well, where we learn how to deal with the breath and control it and be able to get hypoxic and be able to handle that. And for a lot of people who come into this world who've never, and in particular, I've dealt with a lot of CrossFitters, where if we put a CrossFitter in the pool who's never been in the pool, the immediate problem is that they can't breathe and they're trying to breathe every stroke. And that's a big problem. And so getting them to learn how to deal with the hypoxic aspect of that and to control their breathing, control their pacing, and control their training via this hypoxic deal has become a big part of what I've played with. And I had always read that you want to live high, train low. But I was going prior to that and training high and then coming back and living low, because I live at sea level basically. You can still get an adaptation and the ability to handle going up to high altitude by training at high altitude and coming down. But when we started playing with the altitude tent, we found that the train low, live high principle was actually better. And what we found we could actually do was we would go and train as hard as we could at sea level, and immediately following that, because the facility was where the altitude tent was, we would go and attempt to recover in the altitude tent. And it started off with about 30 minutes, and it would increase to roughly 90 minutes or even 2 hours at some points, if we had the time. That being said, the adaptation was very evident. Recovery times would speed up. And then I would actually have to go up and race at altitude, not being up at altitude, and only utilizing the altitude tent for recovery protocols throughout the weeks. And I had absolutely no problems at altitude from that point. When I first found the training mask, I just started playing with it and started seeing what I could get out of it. I started having all my friends who had one start playing with it, because I have a bunch of friends in Hawaii and a lot of the surfers that were using this, the mask. That said, about 6 months ago, I started having the athletes at the facility start to use it, and I have a few of the CrossFit athletes that I've been working with use it. And it has become a staple part of what we've been doing to develop more lung capacity, better hypoxic training. Getting 100% out of the athlete during training is the optimal goal, so that we can create an adaptation out of that and know when to catch that super compensation wave. But when we add the recovery device, or when we add the training mask to the recovery, that's where we start to see some radical changes start to happen, because people's recovery times are not as fast at that point. And so what we try and do is not limit the training necessarily, but limit the recovery protocol. And in that, the adaptation after about 2 weeks is they start to recover a lot faster. And then when we don't even have the mask, the recovery is even faster than that. So that was the premise of what we've been doing. I've had Rich Froning using it for the last 6 months. He's been using very similar protocols to what I've just gone over. And Danielle Horan has also been using it. She's been using it probably the last 3 or 4 months, and we've seen enormous increases out of their endurance side of stuff.